Sharp, frightened. "Let go of me, Leonard." River stopped dead, his heart hammering against his ribs. The words were a warning, a desperate plea. Leonard's voice was low and sticky, oozing false concern. "Come on, Kate. It's just the bedroom, just a talk. You're drunk. You don't mean that." River knew that tone. He'd heard it before, from his own biological father. The manipulative undertone that twisted words into weapons, attempting to control and diminish. Leonard's hand was wrapped loosely around her wrist, but there was an insistent pulling pressure, dragging her gently toward the bedroom door. Kate's eyes were defiant, but her posture was rigid, a silent scream of distress. They weren't loud, but they were laced with the unmistakable tension of someone cornered. He knew that tone, had lived in it for years under his biological father's roof. His heart thundered. Blood surged behind his eyes. His feet carried him before he could think, and when the kitchen came into view, so did Lennart, taller, broader, sneering, and Kate, her arm twisted just slightly the wrong way in his grip. River's hands curled in the fist so tight, his nails dug crescents into his palms. The boy in him, the furious, shattered version who once kicked in his father's door and left a hole in the drywall, wanted to break Lennart. No warning, no words, just the sound of bone giving way beneath rage. But he didn't move. Not yet. He stood in the doorway, shoulders taut, chest rising and falling in shallow gasps. The world narrowed to Kate's eyes, wide, unafraid, but not okay. And Leonard's touch, possessive, entitled. River's vision blurred. A high-pitched ringing filled his ears. He had two choices. He could lose control, or he could choose something else. He closed his eyes, inhaled, counted 1, 2, 3, 4, held the breath like it was the only thing tethering him to sanity. He saw Vera's face, his mother, soft and disappointed the night she found him after his first fight. He remembered Tomas holding an ice pack to his knuckles saying, "This isn't strength, this is surrender with fists on." His fingers shook at his sides. Leonard tugged Kate again, murmuring something low and condescending. That was the moment. River stepped forward, deliberate. Not a storm, not the explosion his body demanded, just clarity. He didn't shove Leonard, not yet. He stood close, closer than was comfortable. "Let go," she said again, each word deliberate, enunciated with a furious precision that vibrated with contained anger. River didn't think. He didn't consider the consequences, the potential for a scene, or the fragile peace he had barely managed to build in his own life. The years of therapy, the lessons on controlling his own explosive reactions, all of it vanished in a surge of pure, primal protectiveness. He crossed the room in seconds, a blur of motion, and shoved Leonard back, hard enough that he stumbled into the kitchen counter with a loud thud, scattering a pile of plastic cups. "Don't touch her!" River snarled, his voice raw, deeper than he usually allowed it to be, a chilling echo of the boy he used to be, the one who struggled with rage and impulse after his abuse. Leonard's eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed to slits of cold fury. "Who the hell do you think you are?" he spat, rubbing his arm. River stepped forward, his fists clenched at his sides, trembling with barely suppressed violence. The feeling was disturbingly familiar. A ghost from his past, a dark, dangerous energy he had fought so hard to bury after the wreck and his subsequent battle with substance abuse. The guy who's gonna break your fucking jaw if you don't leave. Now, the room went still, the remaining partygoers falling silent, their drunken laughter evaporating into stunned gasps. Someone nearby dropped a bottle, the clatter echoing in the sudden quiet. A couple of partygoers, sensing the imminent explosion, turned to stare, their eyes wide. Kate wrenched her arm free and stepped behind River, her breath trembling, her hand grazing the fabric of his sleeve for just a second. Just enough. River didn't move, didn't strike. He chose not to become the boy he had once been, and somehow that felt harder than any fight he'd ever thrown himself into. Leonard, sensing the unspoken threat, not just in River's posture but in his terrifying calm, backed off. Cowards often knew how to read restraint better than rage. Leonard sneered, a flicker of fear mixed with disdain in his eyes. "You're not worth it," he muttered, adjusting his jacket with a theatrical show of nonchalance. But as he walked out, he glanced at Kate, a final, venomous look. "You'll miss me." "Doubt it," she said without flinching, her voice steady, cool, and utterly dismissive. As soon as Leonard's retreating figure disappeared through the front door, River ran a hand through his curls, raking them back from his damp forehead. He sat on the edge of the counter, breathing heavily, trying to calm the frantic pounding of his heart. His hands were still shaking, a visceral reminder of how close he'd come to losing control, to reverting to the person he used to be. Kate walked over, Her face softened now, her earlier fury replaced by a deep concern. She leaned against the wall beside him, arms crossed, her voice quieter now, filled with genuine worry. You okay? I don't know, River muttered, his voice hoarse. He pressed the heels of his palms into his eyes, trying to block out the lingering image of Leonard's sneer, the unsettling return of his own rage. I haven't wanted to hit someone in years. Not like that. Kate walked over and placed a hand gently on his chest, right over his frantically beating heart. Her touch was calm, steady, and reassuring. You didn't. That's the difference, River. You felt it, but you didn't act on it. That's growth. River met her eyes, a wave of shame washing over him. I felt like I was back there, before everything, when I couldn't control it, after the wreck, when I was lost. The unspoken words, when I was using, hung in the air between them, a shared ghost from his past. You're not that broken kid anymore, Kate insisted, her thumb tracing small, soothing circles on his chest. He nodded slowly, painfully, but he's still with me. He's always there, lurking. The memories of his abusive biological parents, the feeling of utter powerlessness, still haunted him. Then let him know he's not in charge tonight, Kate said, her smile small but resolute. She held out her hand, a silent invitation, a lifeline. Come on. I still have wine, and you still owe me a second chance. He took it, his fingers intertwining with hers, grounding himself in her familiar touch, in the solid reality of her presence. The trembling in his hands slowly began to subside. Kate stood in the center of the living room, her jaw set, surveying the wreckage of the party. It had dissolved into aimless chaos. Empty cups, scattered like fallen leaves. Slurred shouting echoing from distant corners, and Leonard's bitter energy still lingering in the air like acrid smoke. The festive mood had curdled, replaced by a lingering tension. Everyone out, she said firmly, her voice not a shout, but loud enough to carry, imbued with an unwavering authority. Seriously. Parties over, some grumbled, confused, their drunken haze slow to clear. Most just grabbed their coats and filed out with confused, hesitant laughter, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. Few exchanged wary glances with River, their faces marked by a flicker of fear or understanding. But the look on Kate's face, resolute and unyielding, silenced them all. River stood at her side, his hands in his pockets, a quiet, solid presence, letting her do it her way. He admired her strength, her ability to command a room without raising her voice. When the last reluctant partygoer had stumbled out, Kate locked the door with a decisive click, the sound final, absolute. She turned, her expression softening completely as she looked up at him, her eyes searching his, filled with a deep, silent question. Come on, she said, slipping her hand into his once more, her touch a tender anchor. Let's go somewhere quiet, really quiet this time. She led him down the hall, past the now silent kitchen, and into her room, shutting the door softly behind them. Kate led him down a short hallway, past a string of paper lantern lights and a closed door with a taped-up poster of some band he didn't recognize. Her room was at the end. She opened it without hesitation and flicked on a small lamp near the bed. The light was soft, golden, warm, a quiet cocoon away from the noise. It was a small room, a sanctuary, not more than a bed, a sturdy wooden desk piled high with sketchbooks and pencils, a shelf overflowing with well-loved books, and a scattering of taped-up photos and faded ticket stubs from concerts long past. It smelled faintly of roses and heat, not perfume, but something lived in and warm, uniquely Kate. That scent, so utterly hers, pulled at something deep in River's bones, a flicker of a long-gone summer night. A memory of a time before the accident, before the drugs, before the abuse, before the complicated life he now led. It made his chest ache with a bittersweet yearning. The bed was unmade. A book lay open on the nightstand. Socks peeked out from under a chair. It looked lived in, real, just like she did. Sorry, she said, brushing hair behind her ear. I wasn't expecting guests. River smiled faintly. It's nice. Still smells like lavender and old paper. She raised an eyebrow, a little smile tugging at her lips. You remember that? He nodded. I remember a lot. He stood near the door, unsure if he should sit or keep standing. Unsure if this was a conversation or a reckoning. Kate sat on the bed, folding one leg beneath her. You can sit, River. I don't bite. He stepped closer, carefully lowering himself onto the edge of a faded green chair near her desk. The silence this time wasn't heavy. It was thoughtful, wary, waiting. So, she said, are we going to pretend this is casual, or... I don't know how to be casual with you, he admitted. Good, she said softly, because neither do I. They looked at each other, really looked. Where did you go? She asked, not accusing, just aching. I didn't know how to stay, he said. Everything felt like it was falling apart, and I wasn't going to let you see that. I would have stayed, she whispered. That's what scared me. Her eyes glossed. You broke me, I know. I don't think I ever really stopped waiting, she said, even when I told myself I had, even when I kissed other people and smiled for other cameras. You were always the ghost I was trying to learn how to stop loving. River blinked hard. His throat was tight again. I never stopped either. They both sat in the quiet, their pain suddenly something shared, not separate. You know, she said, her voice trembling slightly, there was a time I wanted to hate you. I practiced hating you even, but I never could. He leaned forward. Do you hate me now? She shook her head. No, I just don't know if I can survive you again. River stood slowly, moved to sit beside her on the bed, but not too close. Close enough to be real, far enough to give her a chance to leave. I'm not asking you to, I need you to know who I am now. And if you still want to hate me after that, I won't stop you. She was quiet for a long time then. You still draw? He blinked. Not really. Not like before. I kept one, she said, of us. You left it in my notebook. He remembered. The page torn from his sketchbook. A quick portrait of her asleep under a tree, pencil lines soft and reverent. I didn't think you'd keep that. I kept everything. She walked to the window, turning on the old radio sitting on the sill. She flipped through static, her fingers skilled, until she landed on a gritty guitar riff, raw and urgent. The singer's voice rasped in German, urgent, raw, and strangely melodic, pouring emotion into every syllable. This is my favorite song, Kate said, her gaze drifting back to him, a soft smile on her lips. From when we were kids, remember? River nodded, the melody vaguely familiar, a backdrop to so many memories. She sat on the bed, leaning back against the pillows piled against the headboard, and gestured for him to join her. River hesitated only a second, drawn by the pull of her presence, before lying down beside her. They both stared at the ceiling, illuminated by the faint glow of the city lights filtering through the window, as if the plaster held the answers to questions neither dared ask aloud. I remember this, he said quietly, his voice a little hoarse, the scent of her room filling his lungs, easing something tight in his chest. Your room always smelled like this. I thought about it more times than I'd admit, especially when things got bad. Kate turned her head to look at him, her eyes soft, understanding. We were stupid back then, weren't we? So many things we didn't know. Yeah, he agreed, the single word loaded with the weight of years, of mistakes, of paths not taken. The silence lingered, comfortable yet weighty, until Rivers spoke again, his voice barely audible over the soulful German music, his gaze still fixed on the ceiling, as if confessing to the plaster itself. She didn't say anything at first, just continued to watch him, her quiet presence an invitation to continue. Rivers' jaw tensed, the familiar surge of self-blame and guilt returning with a vengeance. I still think maybe if I hadn't gone to his house, if I'd stayed home. The what-ifs were a relentless torment, a loop he couldn't escape. Kate reached for his hand, her fingers strong and steady as she threaded them through his, her touch a grounding force. You're not the reason he got behind the wheel, River. You never were. I hated him, River admitted, the confession rough, tearing at something inside him. And then I hated myself for hating him, and for everything else. Kate looked at him for a long time, her gaze unwavering, completely accepting. I never blamed you, River. None of us did. He nodded slowly, a single tear escaping the corner of his eye and tracing a hot path into his hair. For years I thought my life was normal, and then my biological dad, he shows up out of nowhere. After all that time, says he wants to know me, that he's changed, said he regretted everything, said he'd be different. River swallowed, the memory bitter on his tongue. I believed him, thought maybe I could get some kind of family back, some connection. He stuck around just long enough to borrow money, spin a few more lies, and wreck the truck he bought with my adopted parents' savings. Then he told people I was ungrateful, told me I was just like my mother, that I was impossible to love. He choked back a gasp, the old words still possessing the power to wound. I was so damn stupid, I didn't even see it coming. Not again. Kate squeezed his hand, her grip tightening with fierce empathy. You weren't stupid, River. You were hopeful. There's a difference. You wanted to believe in something good, even after everything. He looked over at her. Her eyes, lit by the amber streetlight through the window, didn't flinch, didn't judge, didn't pity. They simply understood. Maybe ghosts only haunt you if you let them hold your hand, he murmured, the words coming to him unbidden. A sudden insight. She smiled, a small, knowing curve of her lips. Maybe, Or maybe some ghost just wants you to come home, River, to forgive yourself. They lay there in silence, the German radio humming softly, the air thick with everything they never said before, everything they were only just beginning to unpack, and for the first time in years, River felt he could truly breathe. They lay there in silence, the radio humming softly, a backdrop to the unspoken truths that had just been laid bare. The air was thick with everything they never said before, everything that had kept them apart. Then another song came on, a darker melody, slower, eerier, the singer's voice a low lament. Kate sat up suddenly, a visible shudder passing through her. "Turn it," she said, her voice sharp, the sudden shift in her demeanor jarring. River, confused, reached for the radio. "That was your favorite band, right? The one you used to listen to on repeat?" "Yeah," she affirmed, her gaze distant, almost haunted. "That song. Just not tonight, please." He let it go, respecting her unspoken boundary. She leaned back against the pillows, her initial tension easing slightly, though a faint shadow remained in her eyes. "So what happened after you left?" she asked, her voice softer now, steering the conversation back to his story. "I flunked out of college in the States," he said, the dry amusement in his voice barely masking the underlying shame. "Completely burned out. I thought I could outrun the past, you know. Wreck, chaos. But it just followed me there anyway. Smacked me right in the face. But you stayed. I worked for 2 years, tried to pull myself back together. Odd jobs, anything that paid. And I finally got approved to go back to medical school. After all this time. Started classes again last semester. All Adam wanted," River continued, his voice tinged with a complex mix of reverence and resentment, "was for me to get an American education. To be a doctor. That was his dream, not entirely mine. But I thought if I did it, maybe he'd be proud even if he wasn't around to see it. Maybe I could finally prove I wasn't like them." Kate said nothing. She just stared at him, thoughtful, her lips slightly parted, her gaze intense, as if trying to read every line of his soul. River could feel it, the tension between them shifting again, like a slow, powerful current waiting to pull them under, deeper into something he both craved and feared. The air hummed with unspoken questions, with long-suppressed desires. The house noise faded into the floorboards. All that remained was her room, the warmth of the lamp and the years between them, waiting. Kate stood up and walked to the window, pulling the curtain aside to glance down at the street below. Her back to him, arms folded across her chest, she looked like a question he hadn't earned the right to answer. "I never thought I'd see you again," she said, almost too quietly for the room to hear. "I never thought I'd be worth seeing again." She turned around. There were no tears, but her eyes were soft, rimmed in that sadness he remembered too well, the kind that looked like forgiveness trying to learn how to stay. "I don't want to pretend," she said. "Then don't," River replied. A moment passed. She crossed the room and sat beside him. Not touching, not asking, just being there. "I should probably offer you a blanket," she said, glancing toward the hallway. "But Paul has hoarded every decent one in the apartment, and the couch is miserable." River met her eyes. "I'm not asking for anything." Kate looked at him for a long time, and then something shifted in her. "You can stay here," she said, "if you want." He didn't answer with words. He just nodded. She stood up again, pulling back the covers on the bed. She moved like it was nothing, like they hadn't been strangers for years, like his ghost had never haunted her pillow. River took off his shoes, careful not to make a sound, and lay down on the far side. The sheets were cool. They smelled like her, lavender, still. Kate turned off the lamp and slipped in beside him. They lay there in the dark, not touching, just breathing. The silence wasn't awkward. It was sacred. After a while, she turned toward him. "Are you sleeping?" "No," she hesitated. Can I hold your hand?" He reached for her gently, like she might disappear. Their fingers laced together. Their fingers remained entwined, unmoving, like even the smallest shift would ruin the fragile truths the night had gifted them. Then, slowly, Kate slid closer. Her forehead found his shoulder, tentative at first, then settling like it had every right to be there. She let out a long breath that feathered against his collarbone. "I don't know what I'm doing," she whispered. River turned toward her just enough to bring their faces into the same quiet air. "Neither do I," he said. Her hand slid from his to rest on his chest. She could feel the pounding beneath his ribs. Not fast, not lustful, just alive, unsteady, real. She looked up at him, eyes shadowed but open. "Can I?" He kissed her. It wasn't practiced or perfect. Their teeth bumped. His hand shook as it found the curve of her jaw. But it didn't matter. It was the kind of kiss people wrote songs about but didn't believe in until it happened. The kind that carried too much weight to be light. Kate shifted, straddling him. her breath catching as she kissed him deeper, like she was drinking in a version of herself she thought she'd lost. River's hand slid along her hips, then her back, anchoring himself to the only solid thing in the world. It felt like coming home to a place that had burned down years ago but somehow still had a roof. I missed you, she whispered. Or he didn't say it back, he didn't have to. She leaned closer, her eyes locked on his. There was something in her gaze, raw, uncertain, a vulnerability he hadn't seen in years, like she was on the verge of asking something monumental, something that might change everything between them. But she didn't. Instead, with sudden, quiet decisiveness, she climbed over him, her body pressing softly into his. She kissed him. At first it was tentative, brief, uncertain, a touch of memory brushing against the present. Then something gave way. Her fingers slid into his hair, clutching gently, pulling him closer. Her breath was warm against his cheek, then his lips, deepening the kiss with a need neither of them had dared name until now. River pulled back just far enough to breathe, just long enough to whisper, Kate, maybe we should just hold each other. I'm scared of what's next. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be this. Her eyes softened, sparkling with both mischief and understanding. Hey, she murmured, her voice like silk in the dark. We're scientists, right? Or you're trying to be. She smiled gently. We experiment, no pressure. We just see what happens. So they did, slowly, tentatively. Clothes came off slowly, hesitant buttons, a pulled sweater, socks awkwardly kicked to the floor. They didn't laugh, not because there was no joy, but because neither of them wanted to break the spell. They melted into one another, not just shedding clothes, but unspooling the years of distance and guilt and fear. His hands traced familiar paths, relearning the landscape of her body with reverence. Her fingertips mapped him like he was a language she'd once been fluent in, and now longed to relearn. The night stretched around them like a blanket, warm and safe and infinite. Their breaths mingled with the faint hum of music in another room. They moved together with fragile purpose, every touch asking a question, every kiss answering one. Her breath hitched, his eyes closed. It wasn't about sex, it was about something much older, much deeper. A remembering. They moved slowly, as if each thrust might undo them, might crack something that had been waiting to break. She kissed his neck. He whispered her name. She cupped his face like she was afraid he might fall apart beneath her. And maybe he was. When it ended, neither moved. She stayed curled against his chest, fingers drawing invisible shapes on his shoulder. His hand rested at the small of her back, protective, reverent. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't supposed to be. It was human. When the world finally fell away, it was just them, tangled beneath soft sheets, their bodies curved together like parentheses around something sacred. Their hearts beat in time, the ghosts of the past silenced, at least for now, by the gravity of presence. In the hush of the aftermath, River lay awake, his arm draped across her waist, eyes tracing the slow bloom of dawn across the ceiling. Something inside him shifted, not a violent shatter, but the quiet click of a lock opening. This wasn't just a night. It wasn't just old love rekindled. It was the beginning. Fragile, earned, and terrifying. Kate stirred slightly, her breath brushing his collarbone. Then her voice, sleepy, faint, like a thought caught aloud. Maybe ghosts only haunt you if you let them hold your hand. River didn't answer out loud. He just closed his fingers around hers beneath the sheets, and for the first time in years, he didn't pull away. As dawn approached, a pale gray light crept through the curtains, casting soft, shifting shadows over the tangled sheets, revealing the intimate landscape of their shared night. River stirred, the scent of fresh coffee filling the air, rich and comforting, as Kate sat up beside him, pulling her knees close to her chest. He handed her a cup, their fingers brushing briefly, a fleeting contact that felt charged, electric. Something had shifted overnight, a subtle, almost imperceptible change. Kate's eyes, which had been so warm and inviting just hours before, now held a distant coolness, a guardedness that tightened River's chest. She sipped the coffee quietly, her gaze fixed on the cityscape outside the window, avoiding his eyes. The comfortable silence of the night was replaced by a heavy, expectant quiet. River's phone buzzed on the nightstand, a jarring intrusion. He glanced at the screen, his adoptive mother calling. A sharp pang of guilt struck him, cold and immediate. She was probably worried sick, knowing his history, his past failures, his fear of being alone once they were gone. He couldn't answer, not now, not here. He muttered a soft curse under his breath, ignoring the persistent buzz of the phone, letting it die down. Kate remained silent, her attention still fixed outside. Finally, unable to bear the oppressive quiet any longer, River broke it. Can I get your number? He asked, his voice tentative, a hopeful plea. I want to save it, since we're, back. He searched her face, trying to read her, to find the warmth from hours before. She pulled out an old-fashioned address book from the drawer of her nightstand, its cover worn and faded, and handed it to him, avoiding his gaze. He wrote down his number slowly, deliberately, watching her carefully, trying to gauge her mood, her thoughts. When do you go back to the States? She asked, her voice clipped, devoid of the earlier softness. January, he said softly, the date feeling suddenly too close, too final. Her tone sharpened further, the light in her eyes dimming, hardening, as if a shutter had closed behind them. Breakfast? He offered hesitantly, a last-ditch attempt to prolong the moment, to find a way back to the intimacy they had shared. She shook her head, her gaze still averted. No thanks. I really just need some space. He felt the crushing weight of the silence press down on him, a physical ache. The shift was undeniable, a sudden cold barrier erected between them. You should go, she said suddenly, her voice barely a whisper, but firm, resolute. River's hand instinctively reached for the doorknob, but his heart wasn't ready to let go. Not after everything. He turned back, his voice rising with frustration, tinged with a desperate plea. You don't get to do this, Kate. You can't just push me out after everything after tonight. Kate's eyes flashed with a fierce, almost defensive edge, but also a profound shadow of pain, a vulnerability she struggled to conceal. I'm not pushing you out because I want to, River. I'm pushing you out because I have to. Her voice cracked on the last word. He stepped back inside, pacing the small room, running his hands through his hair in agitated frustration. After tonight? After we finally what? She snapped. Got close? Thought we fixed it all in one night? Her voice was raw now, unsteady. It's not that simple, River. I never said it was, he said, trying to steady his breath. But you're acting like this didn't matter. Like we didn't. She cut him off, stepping forward. Her pain was no longer hidden. It surged up, sharp and shaking. You don't know what it's like, River, to let someone in when every part of you is screaming not to carry shame and fear and think maybe just this once, it's safe, and then remember it never has been. He looked at her, every part of him aching. I know fear, Kate. I know what it's like to feel unlovable. But I love you. I've always... Don't, she whispered. Not because it wasn't true, but because it was. I'm yours, he said, stepping closer. If you let me be. Her breath hitched. For a second, it looked like she might break. But then she turned away, wrapping her arms around herself. I want to believe that, River. God, I want to. But I can't let myself right now. I'm still trying to survive me. River sat on the bed, the same bed they'd shared hours ago. It still held the heat of her, the scent of her skin, and yet it felt like a memory already. You're kicking me out, he said flatly. I'm not, she whispered. I'm just trying not to fall apart. I thought this was the beginning. It was, she said, her voice breaking. But some beginnings aren't meant to go anywhere. Some are just what they are. He stood again, not knowing what to say that wouldn't make it worse. I don't want to lose you. You won't, she said, but you have to let me go right now. She walked to the door, her steps small and rigid, like her body didn't trust itself. At the threshold, she paused. Thank you for tonight, River. For seeing me. The door clicked shut. The sound final, absolute. River sat alone in the profound quiet, the first rays of dawn creeping in, cold and unforgiving. He stared at the empty space beside him on the bed, at the lingering scent of roses and heat that now felt like a phantom limb. He wondered if love was ever enough, if the strength of feeling could truly overcome the crushing weight of past scars and unspoken fears. He grabbed his coat, the fabric feeling heavy and suffocating as he shrugged it on. The air between them, what little remained after Kate had left the room, was thick and uneasy, a tangible weight of unspoken words and shattered hopes. He needed to get out, to breathe, to escape the suffocating walls of her room. As he stepped into the hallway, the soft creak of a door caught his attention. He paused on instinct. Voices. He hadn't meant to listen. But he did. Kate's bedroom door had opened slightly, and Paula's quiet voice floated through. What happened? You seem different, happy even. There was a long silence. Then Kate spoke, her voice strained. I don't know what I was thinking. River froze, every muscle in his body locking tight. I mean, it was River, Kate continued, and there was something in her tone. Disbelief, disgust, no. Shame. He's not the boy I remembered. He's broken, Paula. I don't know how I didn't see it until this morning. Kate, Paula said gently, as if trying to rein her in. But Kate kept going, her words tumbling out faster, more defensive than cruel. God, I actually slept with him. My first time was with River Hayes. After all these years, after everything, I let my guard down for 5 minutes and he was back in. And now I feel like I don't even recognize myself. I would never do that. River couldn't breathe. The hallway suddenly felt a mile long, the air razor sharp in his lungs. He took a step backward, then another, retreating from the words like they were physical blows. I don't think he's okay, Kate added, quieter now. And I don't think I can carry that weight. Not again. I can't. She didn't know he was still there, that he'd heard it all. He turned and made his way to the door, fast and quiet, like a thief in his own tragedy. Outside, the early morning air of Berlin bit into his skin sharper than before. Paula, standing in the doorway with a mug in her hand, blinked at him in sleepy confusion. Why are you leaving so soon, River? He couldn't answer. His throat was too tight. Then Kate's voice came again from inside, distant but cutting through the air like a blade. If you love something, you let it go, Paula. The final blow. Meant for him. His heart clenched with such force it felt like it might stop entirely. The morning light felt brutal, intrusive, like it had no right to touch him after what he'd just heard. He walked down the steps, each one heavier than the last, every footfall echoing the dull thud of something ending. The night that had felt like a beginning now closed around him like a door he couldn't reopen. The hope, the softness, the reunion, all of it had collapsed under the weight of old wounds and newer fears. He stepped onto the street, the cold sinking deeper than his bones. As he reached the corner and glanced back one last time, he thought, for the briefest moment. He saw her in the window, half hidden behind the curtain, watching, but the glass was fogged, the light behind her faint. Maybe it wasn't her at all, or maybe it was. He turned away before he could find out. River didn't cry, not until he was out of sight. 3 months had passed, 3 months of silence, 3 months of no calls, every silent ring a fresh wound, 3 months of unopened texts, his words vanishing into the digital void like whispers in a cathedral, unheard and unwanted. Every day since that night in Berlin was another slow bleed, a wound that refused to close, festering beneath the facade of his carefully reconstructed life. He was back in Berlin from being in the States. He'd come back from the grind of medical school, and now here he stood. Outside Kate's apartment again. Same cracked sidewalk, same ship stairwell, but the air felt different, colder, sharper, like the city itself wanted to warn him. Turn back. He didn't know why he was here. Hope, habit, some broken part of him still reaching, refusing to believe it was really over. His breath came out in uneven plumes, fogging the evening air. He stuffed his hands into his coat pockets to hide the trembling. The world around him blurred. Distant traffic, the murmur of laughter, the glow of street lamps stretching long shadows across the pavement. Then she appeared. Kate, not alone. She left the building laughing. Her arm was linked through a man's. River couldn't see the guy's face clearly. It didn't matter. The only thing he saw was her smile. Her body leaning comfortably into someone else. Then she reached up, casually, familiarly, and touched the back of the man's neck. That simple gesture crushed him, and when she kissed him, soft, unhurried, like it meant something, River felt the ground shift beneath him. His heart didn't just break, it screamed. The city dulled. Sounds disappeared. The colors around him faded into a bleak, washed-out grayscale. All he could hear was the hollow drum of his pulse. All he could see was her, the woman he thought he had rediscovered, the one who told him she was scared, that she needed space. Whoever said it wasn't about him. But here she was, laughing, kissing, gone. River's fists clenched, nails digging into his palms until they burned. That familiar rage roared inside him, the one he'd fought down so many times before. The rage that had once ruined him, it whispered old temptations, to lash out, to make her hurt too, to demand answers. But he didn't move. He just stood there, frozen, watching. Because no anger could compete with the hurt. He remembered everything. Her fingers in his hair, her lips trembling against his, the way her voice cracked when she said she couldn't do it. He thought they'd built something real that night, something sacred, a beginning. But maybe it was just closure for her, and maybe he had only imagined the rest. Laughter floated down the stairs like a cruel echo. Kate hadn't seen him, or if she had, she was pretending otherwise. Either way, it was a message he couldn't ignore. She had moved on, and she had meant it when she told him to let go. River swallowed the bitter lump rising in his throat. The taste of regret sat heavy and metallic on his tongue. He turned and walked away. each footstep slow, hollow, echoing in the space where hope used to live. His shadow stretched long behind him, swallowing the light. He didn't look back. He couldn't, because if he did, he wasn't sure he'd survive it. He was a chapter in her past, one she was ready to close. And she had found a new story. The bitter taste of regret coated his tongue, heavy and metallic. He took a slow, steadying breath, forced himself to control the tremors in his body, and turned away from the building, from the lingering sight of her happiness with another man. The shadow stretched long on the pavement, merging with the growing darkness of the night. Silent, solitary figure. He was leaving behind more than just an apartment building in Berlin. He was leaving behind a dream, a promise, and perhaps the last piece of his fragile hope. This concludes the prologue to The Velvet Mask. Next time we dig into present-day River. Thanks for pressing play with me.